From WAMU 88.5 at American University in Washington, welcome to the Politics Hour starring Tom Sherwood. I'm Kojo Nandi. Tom Sherwood is our resident analyst. He's a reporter at NBC and a columnist for the current newspapers, and probably the main reason why Forbes magazine declared Washington, D.C. America's coolest city. Tom Sherwood, welcome.
I'm happy to be here. Is Forbes magazine cool itself?
I
mean, how does it know what cool is?
How does Forbes magazine become the arbiter of
the richest, coolest person in Washington? I don't know who that is. I don't know who that was.
Carol Schwartz, that would be.
Carol, she might be among the coolest.
She joins us in studio. She is an independent candidate for mayor of the District of Columbia. Carol Schwartz, welcome.
Well, thank you. I'm glad to be here, you guys.
Do you agree with Forbes declaring D.C. the coolest city in the nation?
I think it's awfully cool. When I discovered it nearly 50 years ago, I thought it was awfully cool then, too.
Well, it's cool because Tom Sherwood is here. That's what I'm.
That's
my story, and I'm sticking with.
Well, all these lists, they do lists for. We've got the worst traffic, we've got the rudest people, we've got the coolest people. All they do is they're just trying to sell internet hits and magazines.
Well, that's okay as long as they're talking about us. That's important.
If you have questions or comments for Carol Schwartz, call us at 800-433-8850. You can send email to kojo@wamu.org. You can send us a tweet at Kojo Show, or go to our website where you will see a live video stream of the broadcast at kojoshow.org. You can also ask questions or make comments there. This is the week that marijuana legalization got on the November ballot in the District of Columbia. Tom Sherwood, it's been speculated that given that this is an off-year election and turnout in the primary was so very low, that this issue being on the ballot may bring more people to the polls. What do you think?
Well, the D.C. Cannabis Campaign, which is the organization that got it on the ballot, in addition to getting approval for the ballot, the organizers picked up nearly 50,000 voter registration cards. They say the organizers said they're going to go out and register 50,000 people to make sure that they in fact will vote. There's a lot of young people in town who don't have a driver's license, so they don't get registered there. So there's a lot of new people in town who haven't registered to vote. They're going to register them, and it'll have an unpredictable effect on the mayor's race.
Carol Schwartz, do you think this will encourage more people to come out to the polls? And if so, if more people come out to the polls, is that a good thing for your campaign?
Well, I don't know. I think if they're going to do a big voter registration drive, of course, I like to see more registered voters. But if it's all around one issue that I don't happen to favor, that may not necessarily be good for me.
You're the only candidate that I'm aware of that has said you don't support recreational marijuana. Medical marijuana, yes. Decriminalization, yes.
Medical, yes, and I'd like even expanded medical. And the decriminalization, absolutely. I think it's been too discriminatory, and I'm very glad to see that.
Would you be upset if, well, of course you would be, but are you worried that Congress might interfere even if the city votes for it?
Whether I like something or don't like something, I don't want Congress interfering. And so I will certainly do a pushback with Congress, even if it's an issue where I agree with them. They should, butt out. This is our city, and this is about us.
Before we get to your campaign, the individual against whom you ran on at least a couple of occasions, former Marion Barry, had some parking ticket problems this week. He also had some ongoing ailment problems because he's a diabetic. We hope for a speedy recovery whenever we have such an incident. But it brought to light, Tom and Carol Schwartz, the fact that Mayor Barry and apparently Ward 7 council member Yvette Alexander both had a lot of outstanding tickets. Is there a policy when you were on the council, Carol Schwartz, to kind of turn a blind eye to council members getting tickets until a long period of time has elapsed?
No, listen, I never tried it. I pay my tickets on time.
I don't
want it to double. Now, if a council member is on official business, they can park free, not everywhere, but at certain places
they can park illegally as long as it's not a handicap zone, a fire plug,
rush hour,
things like that.
Yeah, no, but I listen. When I got tickets that were not in any of those categories, I I paid them, and I didn't want them to double, so I paid them quickly. So I can't. There's no policy that I know of that gives us a pass.
Mayor Barry, because he has been ill, and he blamed this latest incident of going the wrong way on the street on a hypoglycemic. Was that the right word?
You pronounced it well.
Hypoglycemic attack.
But his closest people, the people who care the most about him as a person, think he really shouldn't be out driving. That he ought to have someone drive him around. He's
that costs money, man.
Well, and not a government worker. Let me be hastened to say that, but just he needs a little more assistance, I think, getting around so he doesn't get in these situations. But he's resisted that.
Well, his signature program.
Well, we know he marches to his own drummer.
That's true. Indeed. His signature program, the Summer Youth Employment Program, just ended its 35th year. And of course, there are a whole lot of people in the city who say that that's how they first got employment in the city. The program will be continuing. I think you were already on the council when this program got started in 1979.
Yes. Well, I wasn't there yet. I was on the Board of Education. But I think it's a good program, but we need to always make sure that the young people who participate know that when you get a summer job, that it is a job. You need to arrive on time. You need to do something that's relevant. And so when I chaired the committee that had oversight over it, I certainly emphasized that. And I think sometimes they've done a good job with that and sometimes not.
In case you're just joining us, our guest is Carol Schwartz. She's an independent candidate for D.C. Mayor. If you have questions or comments for her, give us a call at 800-433-8850 or go to our website, kojoshow.org, where you can see our live video stream and ask a comment or question. Tom Sherwood is our resident analyst. He's a reporter at NBC and a columnist for the current newspapers. Can we get on to the business at hand?
Yes, well, I want to just talk briefly about summer jobs because it's important. One, for those new voters who are in town who are going to be introduced to Carol Schwartz and reintroduced to the older ones. The summer jobs program, Mayor Gray today, they're having an event at 6 to 9 tonight to celebrate the end of this year's summer jobs program. I don't believe there's been any negative stories, which is a good thing. And they're going to, in fact, honor Mayor Barry for the 35 years of summer jobs. Even though many children got paid for not working and some didn't get paid for working, there was lots of various problems through all the administrations, Mayor Williams, Mayor Fenty, and Mayor Gray. But the issue is that tens of thousands of young people were introduced and have been introduced to the world of work, just as Carol was talking about. Yeah. Some people are asking, now to ask you, Ms. Schwartz, why not have some type of summer job program year-round so that students, high school juniors, maybe even seniors, could have some type of job after school during the school year rather than just doing it for 7 weeks during the summer.
Yeah, no, I would certainly, if I'm elected mayor, would consider something like that because I think we need to keep our young people occupied in constructive ways.
You filed over 6,500 signatures this week to become a mayoral candidate for the 5th time. 2,000 of those signatures you say you personally collected. You said this week that your candidacy should not be underestimated. What do you mean by that?
Well, I'm glad you asked the question. I mean, one, I'm thrilled that we had over 6,500.
Can I answer this question? She thinks the media has underestimated her. You fussed at Mike DeBonis of the Post.
So everybody in the media.
I'm cutting right to the issue and then she can explain it.
Okay, well, no, first I want to talk about the petitions, which I'm really excited about, and that is over 6,500 collected by myself, who alone got over 2,000 of those signatures, and with 72 volunteers. Not one penny was spent for one signature. That's highly unusual. Most people pay people to collect signatures. And we did it with all volunteers that represented every ward of the city and signatures from every ward of the city.
You surprised people with the number of, some people were wondering whether you would, in fact,
could even get to 3,000, much less, far more than double that. And 72 people, and most of whom I didn't know. They called when I first announced, and as you all know, it was a surprise announcement. I thought I could be that Maytag repairman sitting there, nobody calling, and being very lonely, for those of you who remember the Maytag repairman commercials. And but anyway, it didn't prove to be that way. People were ringing our phone off the hooks, continue to do so, and those petitions were collected by mainly strangers to me. So it was really thrilling.
Before Tom gets into this conversation and pushes me out of it completely, my own uninformed speculation is that your path to winning this race is a simple one. you have got to get a lot of registered Democrats in the District of Columbia to vote for you, because the Democrats are an overwhelming majority.
76% of the
How do
voting
you plan
population.
on doing that?
Well, listen, I've been fortunate that even when I was a Republican, that Democrats voted for me. I mean, I would never have won an election if I had just depended on Republicans and independents. So Democrats are used to voting for me. In fact, they walk up to me all the time now and say, "You're the only blank I ever voted for." You know, they constantly remind me about that. So if they all just get together and do it at the same time, I could win. The people that voted for me for one election or another
How
election.
about those people that Tom mentioned who are new voters in the city? Who
Well,
are
I'm
not familiar with
introducing
New
myself to the new voters. I'm out and about all the time. I think my record should make them look at me and look at me seriously. One of the things when you talked about my being considered that I consider that I'm being underestimated is I keep reading things like in a city paper article, Will Summers said that, you know, little chance of winning, can't win. Then they use things like 5% of the vote or 10% of the vote. I mean, I've never gotten less when I ran for mayor, and I know it was a 2 race, not 3 people plus others in the race, and where I never got less than 30% of the vote, and that was when I was a Republican, and then as much as 42% of the vote. So I think so I think it's terribly unfair to do the she can't win, she's going to get this ridiculous number of low votes. Where's the poll? Where's the poll? I want to tell you all about something. Speaking of polls, I had about 3 or 4 weeks ago, there was a poll out. I didn't know who did it, but I found out about it from friends who were the receivers of this poll. They would say there are 3 people we want to know your favorable ratings of and your unfavorable ratings of. And they named the 3, I guess, considered leading candidates. Bowser, Catania, and Schwartz. They named all 3, and on a scale of 1 to 10, list favorabilities and unfavorability. And then the next question was, if the election was held today, who would you vote for, Bowser or Catania?
Left you out?
Left me out. I wasn't even in it. And then the person that told me, there were several people, but one kept saying, I kept yelling Schwartz, and I kept pushing 3. It was vote 1 for one and 2 for the other. And so I think that poll was done by a PAC. I think it was called DC First, that was the same PAC that was put together for Patrick Mara in 2008 to run against me. It's the same players, according to the city paper. But anyway, they didn't even have a chance to punch.
It's called a push poll if they do try to do that. A push poll is try to get people to just focus on who the poll wants you to focus on. But this goes to the issue of you've got.
Well, why don't they do a real poll?
Well,
somebody should do a real poll.
They're not interested in a real poll. They're trying to get somebody elected. Here's the deal.
But why don't we in the media do a real poll?
Bowser and Catania have contemporaneous records of things they've been doing the last couple of years. Certainly, Catania's run citywide 5 times. Bowser's very well known. They have money. They have organization. They have campaign structure. They're organized on the precinct level. You told us the other day that you don't have a lot of money. You've got to report Sunday night or Monday night your report, and you said you're not going to have a lot of money. You've loaned your campaign $30,000.
I've loaned $30,000.
Raised about 30, but they have hundreds of thousands. Bowser may be up around 800 or more thousand, and Catania will be over 4 probably.
Well, she's raised, all over about $2.5 million
in the field
for
like
this
that,
election.
where the media? You mentioned this paper. How do you compete in a field where you think the media is not giving you fair shake, and the campaigns that you're running against are very well organized?
Well, we're very well organized. You don't get 6,500 or more signatures not being organized. And we have a huge cadre of volunteers. So we're doing with volunteers what they are doing with paid workers.
Are you doing precinct organization or ward
Well, we
organization?
will. It's 3 months to the campaign. One has been out there since March of 2013. What is that, like 15 months or something? The other one's been out there, when you count his exploratory committee, about 8 months. And so we've been out there less than 2 months. I can assure you we will have a strong organization when it comes to election day.
And
we have nearly another 3 months to build that.
One of your supporters said to me, I was just worried she doesn't have enough money.
Well, listen, I have very strong name recognition, and even though I've been gone for a while, I have strong name recognition. I have strong face recognition. I think most people admired the work I did. One of the things that's bothered me, Tom, is all the articles that have been done, and I'm not getting ignored by the media. I'm just getting discounted by them. I mean, they'll say my name, but they'll say, "Oh, she's not going to get any votes." Well, let's do a poll. Let's do something that'll show I don't have the money to do a poll.
I want to get to issues, but this, of course, will come up, so we might as well bring it up now in the form of an email from Carl, who writes, some of the coverage of Ms. Schwartz's entry into the mayoral campaign had suggested it has less to do with her interest in the office and is more about sour grapes between her and David Catania, the other independent candidate. In effect, she has been characterized as running as a spoiler to siphon votes away from Catania. What does she have to say in response to that criticism, and why isn't she instead running for the at-large seat reserved for non-majority candidates? I can answer the last part of that question. Been there, done that.
Been there, done that, and did it for 16 years, actually. And everybody after 16 years is entitled to an advancement. They are. They're entitled to advancement or the opportunity. The opportunity for an advancement. I don't mean I don't ever feel entitled to anything. I work very hard for everything I've ever gotten. But I do think that you're entitled to an opportunity for advancement. This is a rumor that was put out by the Catania campaign the day I announced, and his supporters continue to whip it up. It's ridiculous they say that I was a put-up job by Muriel Bowser. Anybody that knows me knows that I'm my own person. It is so ridiculous. It's also disgusting and degrading. Look at my record, my long record of substantive things. One of the things I want to talk about. So I did say in the post the other day that I intend to siphon off votes from everybody. I'm in this election to win it. I'm not in it to hurt any one person. I'm in it to win the election.
But you don't, and I accept that as your answer. But other people do say, and people feel, that you had the right to be mad at David Catania because in 2008 he helped orchestrate the campaign that had you lose the Republican primary.
That's absolutely right.
And so therefore you do have a personal dislike for him.
Well, no, and he also used the people who were mad at my giving Steve to workers,
so
which I'm very proud about. But I was running for mayor long before he was an ingredient in this election.
But can I just put this to bed, maybe?
No, you never put it to bed.
Well, I'm not going to put it to bed.
Both of you have brought this up. It is 2 months into the campaign. When are you ever going to just put it to bed?
I have one more question. If you want to win and be mayor because you think you would be a good mayor, I understand that, and I buy that.
And my history of getting along well with people and getting jobs done I would be a good mayor.
Stipulated. All right. If you are not the candidate who wins, do you have a choice between your two opponents? Would you prefer to see Muriel Bowser, the Democrat, or David Catania, the Independent? If it turns out we get those polls a few weeks from now, or a month or so from now, we have polls, and you're not credible as a candidate because you don't have enough support.
I'm never going to pick one of my opponents. Okay. I'm going to pick Carol Schwartz for mayor.
All right, we did make her say David Catania's name. She had not said that on this program.
Listen, I don't mind saying anybody's name, but it is. The thing about this campaign that's really been irritating, and that is that having to spend endless amounts of time answering this charge that was started by them.
Let's move it on.
Both you and Tom have lovely hairstyles, and I know you don't want to mess your hair up by putting on the headphones. But Kathy in Annapolis, Maryland, is going to take us to issues. Kathy, you're on the air.
I hope so.
Kathy, you're on the air. Go ahead, please.
Oh, thank you. I'm not sure this is the right forum for this, but I have a question about, people who live in D.C. and get the subsidy to go to state colleges around the country. And, with the lack of funds around, I was wondering if there's a way to tailor that so that it really goes to the people who need it as opposed to just everybody who lives in D.C.
Well, that's a federal program, and I think it's a good thing. Nor would I tailor that. Now, there is one that hasn't been funded yet, but that will do a local program, and I think that probably should be tailored.
You released your campaign manifesto in June, and you say you're concerned that the city is leaving seniors, minorities, and the poor behind. Can you talk about what you plan to do about that, Mayor?
Well, listen, I want to work on affordable housing. I think that we're watching people being pushed out of the city, and so I want to protect our seniors who've lived here and help them, and I want to have affordable housing and rental housing, and I'm looking at best practices around the country. I have some ideas, the inclusionary zoning thing we did 13 years ago to try to put that to better use. So affordable housing, I want to do drug treatment. I think that now that we got money coming in, I see we have a lot of people that need drug treatment and alcohol treatment, and that's why I haven't been assigned on to the recreational marijuana thing, because I think that we have other addicted residents, and I don't want to add to that number. So I'm also worried about our diminishing diversity, and that is not just racial diversity, but also economic diversity. So I want to concentrate on the homeless population and mental health issues related and addiction issues. I also,
can we ask about homeless, because it's been a big issue that D.C. General Hospital has had hundreds of families, that the homeless population has transformed from mostly single men and some women and to families with children. There are hundreds or 1,000, I don't know how many, 600 children at D.C. General. Everyone knows that's an issue, but when people talk about it, they want to fix it. I don't hear them say, we've got to put home facilities in all 8 wards of the city. We've got to do this. We have to do that. People just talk about it as a serious issue they want to address. What would you do specifically about homeless that's not being done, that the mayor hasn't tried to do?
Well, no, I think D.C. General is certainly deteriorated. I mean, it has, rats around. I mean, I certainly
I know how bad the
up.
problem is, but I don't hear a solution.
Well, listen, you clean up the facility, you put people in, and you make it habitable.
Okay.
And you do programs, and these things are not impossible. They're not impossible to do, and I can assure you that I will get them done. If you've watched me, I mentioned about this. When they do articles about me, they talk about my personality. I give a lot of hugs and womanly advice. But look at my record, whether it be a Whistleblowers Protection Act, whether it be establishing the Department of the Environment, whether it be getting SUVs out of being the vehicle of choice of every government worker. I have done the job. We have not tried me. We've tried everybody else. We've not tried me. I think that I show that I have the know-how, the knowledge, the record, the background, the commitment to get a job done.
It's a low-income house, apartment building downtown in the diminishing Chinatown area of the city. That the owners of the building want to tear it down or change it completely. How much aggressiveness should there be in Park Southern, the place on Southern Avenue that Muriel Bowser's been involved with in terms of those 700 tenants there? I mean, people are afraid they're losing their homes. So we need firm action,
and that's one of the
definitions
reasons.
Of the problem.
But that's one of the reasons why I'm out here, Tom, is because I'm worried about those people that are losing their homes. And I can assure you I will work very hard to do something about it and to make sure that if they do, there'll be alternatives.
Carol Schwartz is an independent candidate for D.C. Mayor. She joins us in studio. Later on the podcast, we'll be talking with Uber executive Rachel Holt. But if you have questions or comments for Carol Schwartz right now, the number to call is 800-433-8850. Here is Jonathan in Washington, D.C. Jonathan, you're in the air. Go ahead, please.
Good afternoon, all. Good afternoon to you.
Well, thank you. Good afternoon.
I have great respect for you and your record, but I do have a question for you.
Sure.
Which is that I recall that you were not in favor of same-sex marriage in D.C., and I wonder what your position is today.
Oh, no, I'm very much in favor of it. In fact, my daughter is married to a woman. I was always in favor of people of the same sex uniting and having all the rights and responsibility of a union. I felt that, along with many in the gay and lesbian community as well, that if we pushed the marriage aspect, the word marriage, that it might be problematic with Congress. And so I also, in many cases, followed the lead of those who were affected. When they decided they wanted marriage, I wanted marriage.
Education, one of the more contentious issues in this mayoral race. You've been talking about your track record on education. You were a council member back in 2007. At that time, you voted against giving control of the school system to the mayor. You say you don't regret that decision, but you have pledged to retain Schools Chancellor Kaya Henderson if you're elected. What do you think the main education issues are now, and what would your approach be to those issues that would be different from your opponents?
Well, I just wanted to say that why I was one of two people who voted, Phil Mendelson and myself, voted against the takeover, the mayoral takeover, and it had to do with doing away with our elected Board of Education, just pushing them aside. We have so little democracy in this town, something I would work very hard to rectify as mayor. But I hated to see our elected body being so pushed aside, and so that's why I
didn't
voted.
hurt Phil Mendelson's career. He's now chairman.
Yes, exactly.
You're hoping it won't hurt yours.
Yes, but I do think the disparity in test scores is very, very concerning. I served on the National Advisory Council on the Education of Disadvantaged Children, which did all the Title I money, and that is for disadvantaged children. And I care greatly about that issue, and I'm going to make sure that we get the resources into those schools where there is such disparity, financial resources as well as human resources. I'm going to call on former teachers who are retired and people all over the region. Of course, we'll do background checks on everybody before we let people into our schools to help supplement what we have now, so each child can be individually tutored by an adult who has worked with children in the past.
I don't want to get short on time.
And I'm going to bust them in if we have to.
Okay. We have our next guest going to talk about Uber, the online app cab service. What is your thoughts about that? There's a lot of cab drivers say that the Lyft and these other cab services at Uber take business. They don't have to have the regulation that cab drivers have, and that they are eating into the very livelihood of thousands of cab drivers. Do you have any thoughts?
Yes, I like competition, but I also like fair competition. Our taxi cab drivers have to have certain licensing and regulations. Insurance and all that. I think anyone else who's competing against them have to have the same. And I think we have a right to regulate them, just as we have a right to regulate the taxi cabs.
We had an event last night that you attended with political reporters and various government officials and candidates. I've talked to a variety of people in the Bowser campaign, and they are very confident. They wouldn't say it publicly, but many of them are saying there's no way.
Saying it publicly.
There's no way. There's no way that David Catania can win the mayor's race, and there's no way that Carol Schwartz can win. And a few of them, not last night, but a few of them have said, oh, you know what's going to happen? Michelle Obama is going to appear with Muriel Bowser or someplace in the city, and that's just going to seal the deal for Democrats to vote for Muriel Bowser. I've heard that like 3 or 4 times from different people, that even that would be a big blessing thing for her. Michelle Obama. What do you think about that?
Well, listen, I don't like when Congress gets involved with our local politics. I would not like to see the president get involved with our local politics. And if he does get involved, I know he recently said
Michelle,
he favored.
Not him, his wife.
Well, but that he favored statehood. But I mean, he's been here a long time, and they've been here a long time without promoting our voting rights. I was thrilled that recently that happened. But I would hope they would not get involved in our local politics, just as I don't want Congress to get involved in our local politics.
Washington, D.C. Joe, you're on the air. Go ahead, please.
Hello.
Hello,
Hi.
Joe.
I am a registered Democrat, lifelong registered Democrat, but I want to say that I am more than likely going to vote for Ms. Schwartz.
Well, thank you, Joe. I appreciate it.
So what are your reasons for that?
Well, a lot of it's good. I'm just tired of Democratic control over the city, actually. The candidates seem kind of tired to me, same old stuff over and again. And I think she's a fresh voice. I'm glad to see her back.
Oh, thank you.
Is that what you're hoping to bring to this campaign?
I absolutely, and so many people have said to me as I've been out and about, oh, finally we have an answer. Like they've been praying for Maya to come back. They've told me they prayed. Where's Carol when we need her? Well, Carol's here, and I can bring us honest government, get the job done. I think I have a personality and temperament for this. I mean, I'm strong and I'm tough, but I'm also fair, and I love people.
You
That's a
filed your
good thing.
signatures, 6,500 of them. What's next for you?
Well, listen, I'm still out. I'm going to be out on the campaign trail. I guess I'm going to have to break down and get on the phone and raise some money, something I hate to do. But I also...
Are you looking forward to debates?
I look forward to it all. I'm having the time of my life. I'm loving trying very hard to finally run this city. As I said before, we've tried everybody else. Why not pick someone who can protect people and our property? And I have a history of doing both, not just talking about these things, but actually doing it.
Carol Schwartz, independent candidate for mayor of the District of Columbia. Thank you so much for joining us. Good luck to you.
Thank you. I enjoyed being here, guys.
Tom Sherwood is our resident analyst. He's a reporter at NBC and a columnist for the current newspapers. I'm assuming, Tom, that like everyone else you have been following what some people are calling Desperate Housewives meets Law and Order, the McDonald trial in the Commonwealth of Virginia. As a former reporter at the State House there, what is your own reflection on this trial?
Well, I only wish this had happened when I was there, which was, of course, long ago before any of this could have possibly happened. This is such an embarrassment for the state, for the Commonwealth of Virginia. We don't know exactly I mean, the next thing I want to see is I want to see former Governor McDonald on the stand himself. He had said that he would testify. I assume that he will. It's just the state is so proud of itself and not being the problems that Maryland had with Mandel and what we've had with Barry and other states have had in Illinois and New Orleans. This is just such a horrible, tawdry trailer park sideshow, you know, of taking money and for fancy cars and fancy vacations, and whether they did it to barter some of their power, I don't know yet. The jury will have to decide that, but it is just unseemly.
Joining us in studio now is Rachel Holt. She is the regional general manager for the East Coast for Uber, a mobile transportation network connecting people with taxis, private cars, and ride shares. If you have questions or comments for Rachel Holt, call us at 800-433-8850. Send email to kojo@wamu.org. Send us a tweet at Kojo Show, or go to our website, kojoshow.org. Ask a question, make a comment there, watch our live video stream. Rachel Holt, thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
It's been something of a roller coaster in our region this week for Uber. Maryland's Public Service Commission ruled that Uber is like other for-hire car services and should be regulated in the same way. Virginia, however, went the other way with an agreement to allow Uber to operate. Care to comment?
Absolutely. It has been a busy week, not much sleep for us here at Uber in D.C. But, you know, I think what we saw was a state, you know, in Virginia and the governor there and Attorney General taking a real step forward, saying here's a technology app that's good for consumers, that's good for economic development in our area, and it's something we want. And at the same time, we saw Maryland say, you know, let's try and put this new technology into rules that were developed in the 80s or 90s. And essentially what happened in Maryland was they said, you know, imagine if Orbitz, right, the airline booking company, you know, a ruling was said, hey, let's regulate them like an airplane. Like an airline.
I've tried to regulate them in terms of paying sales taxes.
Yes.
Right, and I think what we're all about is let's put in place a common sense framework, a common sense set of regulations that say let's protect consumers, let's protect drivers. It's exactly what the district did in 2012 with Councilmember Che's Innovation Act, and let's create a set of rules that make sense for this new system. Let's not say, let's put a square peg in a round hole and say, let's force fit Uber, a technology company, into a really old set of rules.
Well, the perception tends to be that Uber doesn't want to be regulated at all, that Uber feels it should be free to operate well because consumers want us, and therefore we should be allowed to operate. We shouldn't have the kinds of restrictions that taxi drivers have. We shouldn't kind of have the kinds of fees that taxi drivers have. And of course, taxi drivers say people want us too. Why should Uber be free of the restrictions that we have?
And I think that's a bit of a misnomer. I think what Uber is really about, and there's a bill right now that's going through the D.C. City Council and the Transportation Committee that's been introduced that says, let's put in place a set of common sense rules. Let's mandate background checks that adhere to a certain set of requirements. Let's mandate insurance. And by the way, our insurance is 20 times higher than D.C. taxis have today. Let's mandate and say that we want operators in this space and people entering this space that are adhering to a set of very high requirements, but those may be different sets of requirements than were right for taxis, and maybe a different set of requirements that are right for an anonymous person getting an anonymous ride from someone on the street by putting their hand out.
Do
you use the taxi service Uber? I mean, do you use the service Uber? Give us a call, 800-433-8850. Do you think there should be more competition in taxis and car services in our region? 800-433-8850.
In a simple sentence, you have Uber and you have UberX, which is a different style of vehicle.
Yeah, maybe we have to explain the difference.
Yeah, I was going to say, well, either that or just say, what is Uber before I ask my other question? Just for people who know in a sentence or two, what is Uber?
Absolutely. So Uber is a technology app, and it connects individuals, riders, to transportation through the touch of their buttons. So if you open your Uber app here in the district, what you would see is three different options. Uber Black, which would connect you to a sedan, a typical kind of black sedan, and Uber Taxi, which would connect you to a DC taxi, and Uber X, which would connect you to a ride-sharing vehicle. And there are different price points and different quality cars. And for us, it's really about let's provide a spectrum of options and consumer choice.
For the purpose of this discussion, I downloaded that app today, and there was somebody trying to pick me up here at the station, even though I'm not going anywhere.
Well, be careful. Actually, I mistakenly called someone. I didn't really mean to, but
there you go.
But you mentioned insurance. One of the cab drivers have to have they have to have their in the process of having their cars all painted the same. They're required to do that. They must have the rooftop sign saying taxi for hire. They must have a credit card machine. We haven't yet ordered them to have water in their cab, but maybe that'll come. But what about insurance? You mentioned insurance. Some of the cab drivers say they have these onerous obligations to have insurance. Does an Uber driver have a general policy of insurance that the Uber company has, or do they depend upon their own insurance?
Yeah, absolutely. So they're a little bit different depending on the product. So in the Uber Black product, these are commercially licensed limousines, the same one you might call if you went online.
Commercial driver's license,
commercial driver's license, commercial insurance.
They have to have insurance themselves.
Commercial insurance.
Yes. It's not an Uber insurance policy for which they're covered.
And that's the way the Maryland PSC regulates in Maryland, the Virginia DMV regulates, and
Does
DC
UberX do the drivers of UberX have insurance?
Yes, and so the drivers of UberX all have their own insurance, and in addition are covered by Uber's commercial policy. And so the Uber commercial policy is in effect when the app is on. So it says the app is on. That means commercial activity might possibly occur. When a trip is requested, as soon as a trip is requested, that driver and that passenger are insured up to $1 million per incident. The district rules require $25,000 to $50,000. So these cars and these rides are being insured literally 20 times. How do you vet
the drivers? If you get into a cab, there's what they call a face card. You see the face of the driver, you see a number, you can complain to the cab commission if there's an issue. How do you vet your drivers? Some of whom are pretty good. Well, most of the people I talk to love the service when they use it. Others have just been horrific. So how do you vet the driver so we know that the consumer is getting a good driver?
Absolutely. So every single driver that comes on the Uber system goes through a background check that's incredibly rigorous. to compare again to DC, those background checks are 3 years. Our background checks are 7 years. And so anyone who has anything in their past that obviously wouldn't make them a good driver, or the type of person you'd want to be alone in a car with, those folks are all disqualified.
I want to get to the insurance before you get away from the insurance issues, because Paul in Kensington, Maryland, wants to address the insurance issue. Paul, you're on the air. Go ahead, please.
Yeah, hi, Kojo. Thanks for taking my call. Great show as always. Yeah, my daughter has decided that she wants to finance graduate school by becoming an Uber driver in Chicago. And I have some concerns about that, mainly liability and her own safety, but specifically about the insurance. So what I just understood then, Uber provides $1 million worth of insurance. So does that kick in first while Uber is running, and then she relies on her own liability insurance otherwise? Is that in addition to? Is it a first payer, second payer system, or what? That's my concern. And what part of her proceeds go to pay her portion of the Uber insurance?
Here's Rachel Holt.
Absolutely. So first of all, I think one of the things we hear time and time again is how being an UberX driver is great for putting someone through school, is great in between jobs. It's great to hear that story. So the UberX insurance applies. So the insurance you're talking about, from the moment your daughter accepts a request, Uber's $1 million policy is the primary policy, so that becomes the first policy on her. If God forbid anything happens,
she has to be on a call.
That happens from the moment she accepts a call.
But if she gets into her car and she's driving on one of the beautiful streets of Chicago, she doesn't have a call. She's on her own insurance.
Well, if she's going, to class or going back and forth, then of course she'd have her own insurance. She'd have her own insurance.
I mean, if she's out on the street and she's waiting for someone to get an app text, and her phone is on, but she doesn't have a call, is it her insurance or your insurance while she's waiting to be called?
So in that case, we have a contingent liability policy, which applies up to $100,000. Again, it's above what most commercial policies even are.
She ought to double check.
And having higher insurance limits than is required is a good thing in most people's eyes, but an accident in which someone is killed or injured can result in a multi-million-dollar lawsuit. The issue that has come up is whether someone suing a driver will also sue Uber, and what the courts will say about the independent contractor arrangement.
So I think the insurance issue is a little bit different than the independent contractor arrangement. All the drivers that partner with Uber are free to use Uber's app, other apps. They're free to go on and off the system whenever they want. That's a classic kind of independent contractor relationship. The insurance requirements are spelled out quite clearly, and so if there is an incident, if there's an issue or an incident, that's obviously when Uber's policy would kick in.
Who owns Uber?
Who owns?
Yes, who owns the Uber?
Well, Uber, it was founded, or there are a lot of people that own Uber. It was founded by two co-founders in 2010 in San Francisco, and then we've had quite a bit of interest from venture capitalists and others.
Can you say who are your top 3 venture capitalist investors?
We've had investments from
Goldman
a number
Sachs.
of folks. Goldman invested at one point.
Jeff Bezos.
Jeff Bezos has a very small investment.
Yeah.
Why is it that you're reluctant to tell us who are the financial backers of Uber? People to but I've looked at any number of times. It seems to me you guys have been reluctant to say it's an $18 billion value now at about $18 billion, 128 jurisdictions around the world. I want to know who owns it.
That information is all public, right? It's a Delaware C corp. I can certainly
Who are your top 3 investors?
So we've had investments from Menlo Ventures, which is a venture capital.
The top 3.
They led our Series B round, and they're
I don't want to drag
investor.
down a lot of finances, but I'd like to see something more about it.
No, we've had it's been quite publicized. Fidelity, Wellington. There are quite a lot of public.
Here is Mohammed in Tyson's Corner, Virginia. Mohammed, you're on the air. Go ahead, please.
Yes.
Yes, Mohammed, go ahead.
The question is that Uber advertised their system for UberX 40% cheaper than taxis. And these Uber X drivers are the ones who are not making their living off of UberX. They are working for a couple of extra dollars, and that's a very, very unfair competition for the cab drivers who in DC are trying to make their livelihood and support their family?
Well, I'm not sure that is a question that Rachel Holt can answer, but one she might be able to answer. Is it possible for someone to make a decent living as a full-time Uber or UberX driver? Because obviously a lot of taxi cab drivers, the old business model set as a full-time job where they make a living doing it, and so they feel that that competition is unfair. Can an Uber or UberX driver do the same?
Absolutely. So we recently published some data that showed that in New York, UberX drivers were making almost $90,000 a year. In San Francisco, it was $74,000 a year, and DC is close behind that. And I think what we've seen is that there are a lot of people that are former taxi drivers that have chosen to join the Uber platform, either as an Uber taxi driver or through UberX or through Uber Black and SUV. And what we're seeing is that this is a big job growth generator. We're seeing 20,000 jobs a month globally through the Uber platform that are being added. And I think that's, right now, I think that's pretty hard to avoid. As it's an important economic stimulator. And
if I'm an Uber driver and then I share in the money that we make, put it on a credit card, do I get a 1099 from Uber at the end of the year? How much money I've been paid by Uber out of what I've earned?
Yeah.
So it's a 1099.
Correct.
Now also the District of Columbia, I think it's just this week, is talking about if an Uber driver does more than 20 hours a week, then he or she would have to have more regulation or meet some new standards. I know the city's kind of gone back and forth on all types of different regulations, but what is that about? And who would know, other than you guys, how many people have driven more than 20 hours a week? There's no monitor on them.
Well, I think what we've seen time and time again is that DCTC has proposed regulations.
DCTC?
Sorry, the District of Columbia Taxi Cab Commission
right,
has proposed regulations, some of which make a lot of sense and some of which don't. And what we're seeing right now is the City Council and the Transportation Committee, particularly Councilmember Che and Grasso, take this issue up. There was a bill that was introduced in the spring, and that's going through committee, that'll be going through committee this fall, that takes a different approach, that says let's not put restrictions like random restrictions, artificial restrictions, such as limiting economic opportunity, limiting the number of hours on the road. That doesn't make sense, right? Right now, limiting people's job opportunities is not something that we want to do. And it says, let's again put in place common sense regulations that protect consumers, that protect drivers, that make sure everyone's safe. And I think that's a very good approach.
We got an email from Ted who writes, in a market where people are encouraged to vote with their wallets, it's clear that Uber is a successful and desired alternative to a cab service, which is frequently perceived as crooked, selfish, and sometimes combative to its customers. We're clearly sick of the status quo. Why does the regulatory service keep making this an uphill battle for Uber and its customers versus making them partners in the city and bringing them into the fold? Maryland does recognize the changes in the industry, and it seems plans to work on new regulations specifically for car sharing. What are you advising Maryland to do, or are you involved in advising Maryland or in any other way?
Well, that actually just came out earlier this week. I think I think right now we're trying to understand what role the regulatory body has versus the legislature in crafting these kind of rules, and we're certainly willing and excited to participate in that process, as we have here in D.C. and as we have in other states around the country.
Virginia is allowing ride sharing, but it's a temporary agreement for the moment. This is a reversal from the position taken in June. Can you talk about that agreement? What does it say?
Yeah, and I think the agreement and the approach Virginia took is a very good one. It says, hey, let's take a look at what companies that are doing a really good job in this area are doing. Let's understand their insurance requirements. Let's mandate those requirements. Let's understand their background checks, and let's mandate a very high level of background checks. Let's ensure that the vehicles are inspected and are safe. But what it doesn't say is let's impose a set of artificial restrictions, 20 many hour restrictions, things like that, that don't make sense, aren't in the best interest of consumers, aren't in the best interest of drivers. And a lot of what you've seen in Virginia this week is saying, let's codify the standards of the players in this space that are doing a really good job, and let's make sure that an unscrupulous actor doesn't come in and enter the space with standards that aren't up to that level.
You're trying to create a new business. Do you have who is the Uber lobbyist in the district?
Oh, I mean, do you guys have registered lobbyists? I haven't looked. Yeah, I mean, we do work with lobbyists in
lobbyist?
DC. We work with a lobbyist from a law firm, Aaron Fox. But
do you have a name? Do you know? I'm sure you know who the lobbyist is.
John Bowker.
John Bowker. Who's got a lot of experience on the Hill, work for Ms. Norton. Now,
but I think what you see here, and I think
I don't ask that as a critical question,
no.
But that's the way Washington works. Do you give political contributions?
We do not.
So there are no corporate contributions.
That's correct, and I think that's an important tack that Uber has taken. That's quite different than taxis, than other industry groups.
Running out of time very quickly. I wanted to get in Chris's question in Washington D.C. Chris, you're on the air. Go ahead, please.
Hi, thanks for taking my call. My question is, how does Uber decide the rate augmentation? Like, sometimes you'll call a cab or call an Uber and it'll be 3 times the rate, and it seems to me, past few times it's happened to me, it's happened when I'm down at the bottom of the H Street corridor in an economically depressed and less desirable area. But later in the same evening, I'm up in Georgetown, and there's not the 3x fee. It just seems kind of underhanded.
Yeah, so the way that fee is done is strictly based on supply and demand. So a computer takes a look at the number of cars that are out on the system at that time and says, hey, we want to make sure that folks can get a ride when they really need it. So you take a night. I mean, New Year's Eve is the classic example. You take a night like New Year's Eve. Drivers and partners have a lot of options on that evening, whether it might be staying home with their family or taking a private job. And so when the prospect of having higher fares is possible, they come out on the Uber system.
Is there a maximum fee? We're almost out of time. Is there a maximum fee?
I mean, you will almost never see the fare, a rate go above 2 or 3x multiples. But what you really see is
what does that mean, 2 or 3x multiples?
So what you'll see is that at times of very peak demand, you may see that the rate of an Uber X trip, for example, might rise to account for supply and demand and to encourage riders on the road.
Do you have an average fee that you guys charge?
30 seconds.
Average fee? What's about an average fee
in the
district?
Yeah, the average Uber X fare is about 25%, 30% below a taxi.
Rachel Holt, she is the Regional General Manager for the East Coast for Uber, a mobile transportation network connecting people with taxis, private cars, and ride shares. We hope this is not your last appearance on this broadcast. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
Tom Sherwood is our resident analyst. He's a reporter at NBC and a columnist for the newspapers. We hope it's not his last appearance on this broadcast.
No, not either.
Thank you all for listening. I'm Kojo Nnamdi.